Hey, good morning guys. Welcome back to DJ's Workshop. Today we're going to be working on the 2000 Eurovan. We had a check engine light pop up the other day and it came up with a code P1242 which indicates a number 6 fuel injector issue. So these vans are very difficult to work on, like most vans, very tight, hard to get to. So before I start tearing into removing grills and radiators and manifolds and all that stuff, I want to try and do a test on the wiring harness to see if I can determine if that injector is in fact bad. We're going to do a resistance test on it with a multimeter, and if it does show bad, then we're going to order up some parts and we'll dive into it and get it taken care of. Alright guys, I'll show you what we're up against here. Just take a look. Alright, so here's what we got. A little dark in here, it is early, but let me get this thing fired up here. Okay, so we do have the check engine light on, and I don't know if you can hear that, but it is misfiring. So we definitely got an issue going on here. So we're going to get it into the shop, and then we're going to see if we can figure out which injector is bad. I believe it is number 6 according to the code that we had. So we'll do some testing and see what we got. Alright, so we got the van in the shop here, and what we're going to do is we're going to disconnect the fuel injection harness. So let me give you kind of an overview here. So here's the van in the shop, okay, and if we go down here, you have your ignition coil pack here, and down the front of it, I'm going to get a shot here, there is a connector that you have to disconnect, and then we can probe the leads to see the resistance reading on the actual injectors. So let me get that connector off, and then we will test it and see what we got. Alright, so if you look down here, you can see the connector that I disconnected. Okay, now there's 2 red wires with blue tracers, and then there's 6 other gray wires. So on this connector here, kind of hard to see in here, but there's a series of pins, and we're going to basically grab one of the red pins and then connect it to one of the other pins so we can get a resistance reading on that. And I believe the resistance reading should be between 12 and 15 ohms. If we get something that's like 30 or 40, we know we got an issue there, or if it's OL, then we know we got an open circuit. So I'm going to get some leads, we'll get down in there, do some probing, and see what we come up with. Alright, so we're going to do a continuity test here between these pins. So let me see what we get. Okay, so 5 of the 6 are reading 0, but this last one isn't reading anything. So we got an issue with that one. So whether it be something in the harness or the injector, we definitely get something going on there. So what I'm going to need to do at this point is just tear this thing apart. I want to go ahead and replace the injectors. I want to put new plugs and wires. Just because, you know, the vehicle is new to us, I want to start fresh. I don't want to have any issues, especially with winter coming. I don't want to be dealing with this in the freezing cold. So I'm going to go ahead and take this all apart, and while I have it out, I can check the harness just to make sure there's no issues with the harness itself. But basically what's going to happen is I got to take this panel off the top also, and then we're going to have to swing the radiator, the condenser, the transmission cooler, all that stuff out of the way to make a big gaping hole in the front here that we can access it. This cover comes off. It's probably the easiest thing I'll have to do. And then we're going to have to take a bunch of things off of here. We're going to take the intake boot off, disconnect a bunch of different wires and connectors and different things. I'm going to try and do this without having to drain the coolant or the air conditioning because I don't want to deal with that. But if we get everything unbolted, I can swing it out of the way, and then we can get access to the plugs and coils. Now the injectors and the plugs and the coils are just like buried down in there. So buried that you can't even see them at this point. So that's the plan. So I'm going to get some parts ordered up. Probably won't get to it this weekend because I don't have the parts I need, but at least I know kind of what I'm up against here. And we'll get the parts in for next week, and that'll be next weekend's project. All right, so stay tuned. I'll be right back with some parts. All right, so we're back. I have some parts now, so we can start this this job here. So basically, I'll just show you kind of what I got here. So I got a couple of pins, a brake cleaner. We're going to need that. I got a couple of gaskets for the injector manifold. One goes on the top, one goes on the bottom. Okay, I'll show you some part numbers here. That'll help you out. Okay, and we have this one here. While I'm in there, I'm going to be doing a new set of plugs and wires, because why not? I'm going to be in there. I don't want to go back in there, so this is what I picked up for that. Spark plugs, we're going with the NGKs, laser platinums. And there's your part number. These are the fuel injectors that I picked up. And then we'll just need some basic tools, you know, pliers and screwdrivers and sockets and wrenches and things like that. So I think that... All right, now if you look behind the headlight, you're going to see this ring right here. And basically you just pull on that ring, and that's going to release that light, so that it'll allow you to pop it out. So let me do that. Okay, you see that comes right out. And then we can just take the bulb out. Tuck that back in there. So it's basically just this spring holding it on here. Okay, so we'll get that out. And then you can see right here is the screw that you need to take out to get this balance panel out. So just tuck that out of the way. Get this other one off. Alright, let's see if this comes off. Alright, so you get these little rubber grommets on here. You gotta pop the grommets out of this cover so we can get the cover off. Alright, so these are kind of pain in the butt to get out, so what I did is kind of lifted this up a little bit, and then just take a flat blade and put it on the edge and pop it in the hole. Should be able to lift it off. And there we go. Alright, so let's get that out of the way. Alright, so the next thing we need to do now is work on getting all of this out. This is the transmission cooler that I just installed recently. We got to move that, we got to move this coil, we got to move the radiator and the condenser, get all this stuff out of the way. So I'm going to start unbolting some of this stuff, and we'll swing it out of the way. Alright, so there's two bolts, one here, one on the other side. You just kind of lift this up. That's going to let that swing free. The transmission cooler, just unclip that so that'll come out of the way. So I got to drape something over the bumper here just to protect it, and then we'll start swinging this stuff out of the way here. Alright, so to get this piece off, there is a 10mm bolt holding these two tubes on there. And then on the bottom, there are two pieces that just slide into a bracket. You just lift it up off of there. So we'll get that bolt out, and then we'll get this thing lifted up and swung out of the way. All right, so this is the clamp that holds those lines on there, so we just got to get that out of the way. All right, so when you're taking the radiator out, you have to disconnect this connector here, and then there are two connectors down below for the fans. Take those out. I'm going to try and do this without disconnecting any of the coolant hoses. Hopefully it'll just pop out and swing out of the way. Just take your time, be careful, don't break anything. And then once it's out of the way, then we'll have more access to everything we need to get to. Alright, at this point we have the radiator and air conditioning stuff all out of the way, so now you can see we have full access to the front where we're going to need to get to the manifold. So I did put a big piece of foam over here just to keep the fins from chafing on the fender. This one's sitting on a blanket, so just try not to move them around. This hose is kinked right now as we got it bent over, but I think it'll be okay. So we got to start taking apart the intake and all these sensors and get this manifold unbolted because our fuel injectors are buried down in there. So let me start taking some of this stuff apart here. We'll unbolt this dipstick too and just kind of swing that out of the way. Alright, you got to disconnect the throttle cable. There's a series of connectors here and there and everywhere that you got to take off. I just kind of took this thing and swung it out of the way for now. I know there's a couple of bolts on the back side of the manifold you got to get out. So we'll just disconnect what we have to here and take the plug wires out of the way and get this dipstick out of the way, and then we'll see about getting this manifold off. Alright, next thing I'm going to do is take these spark plug wires out of the way. I'm not sure the exact firing order, but what I did was I just marked on them with a marker 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just to make it easier for me to identify where they went back. So let's get all that stuff out of the way. Alright, so next thing we got to do is take the coolant bottle out of the way, two 10mm bolts, take those off, swing this out, and then we got to get to this EGR tube over here, so let's get that off. Alright, so we got some connectors down here that might be in the way. This one here, we got a vacuum line that goes up to here and then up to here. I don't think we'll have to disconnect it. I mean, we'll have to take these bolts off, which are going to be a pain in the ass because they're Allen keys, and of course they don't want to come out. I think these are all coolant lines, so I don't want to mess with those. So let me get some more of these connectors off and see if I can get these manifold bolts out. Alright, so as you guys know, Murphy's Law, if something's going to go wrong, it will. Nothing major, but I have to take these manifold bolts out. And there's always that one that doesn't want to come out. So because it's an Allen, the head of this thing actually just stripped out, and I'm having to use my pipe wrench to get it off. Thankfully it is coming out. It's just slow going. So let me finish getting this bolt out. I'll have to replace it with another one, but at least we can get it out and proceed with the repair. So just be aware, these two that hold the oil tube, for whatever reason, had a lot of corrosion on it. When I pulled that one out, most of it fell off, but there was a lot of this white corrosion on there, and you can see there's like some kind of crap in there, rust or whatever. So that one was a pain getting out. I did get it out, and then this one I'm just kind of fighting with the pipe wrench to get out. So just a heads up for you guys, be careful of those two bolts. Alright, so this piece here, I'm not even sure what it is attached to this bracket, which is bolted to the engine. You have to get this bracket out in order to get the other bolts that are holding the manifold on. Alright, so you have to take this valve down out of the way, which connects there, in order to get to the bolt underneath there. There's another one right there, which I believe the alternator is going to be in the way, so I'm probably going to have to drop that to get that out of the way. This bracket had to get dropped down with whatever this pump unit is. in order to get to the bolts under there. So quite a bit of stuff you got to get out of the way, and then I got to still fight this bolt here to try to get this one out because it's got a lot of corrosion built up in there. It doesn't want to release. So I think one more bolt under the alternator, so I got to move the alternator out of the way. We'll get that last bolt out, and then hopefully I can get this guy out and get this manifold off of here. Alright, so using a 6mm key and a small breaker bar with a socket, I was able to sneak up under there and get that bolt out under the alternator. Thank God. There is one short bolt. Most of these are long, but you do have one short one that goes somewhere under here. I believe it goes to this hole, this part of the bracket where it bolts up underneath there. All right, so once you get all the brackets unbolted, this here, they say to unscrew it here, but it didn't want to come apart, so I just found it easier just to take it off of there. Now I have the manifold off and flipped over. You can see the injectors. Okay, your spark plugs are down in there. There's 3 in the back, 3 in the front. We will be replacing this gasket in the front here also. So I guess the first thing I'll do is I'll take out the old plugs and we'll put in the new ones, and then we'll work on the injectors. Alright, so the plugs we took out look like the same ones that we're going to put in, the double tip ones, both NGKs. Doesn't look too bad. A little bit worn, but not too bad. Alright, so we'll get the new ones all put in there, and then we'll move on to the injectors. Alright, well, seeing as I'm in this deep, I figure let me get the valve cover off because I'm right there, and we'll get a look inside this engine. And she's pretty clean. There's no sludge buildup or anything like that, so she's looking good. I just wanted to get a peek at the chain too to make sure she was tight, and I didn't see any broken guides or anything. Everything looks okay from what I can see. Obviously I can't see down low, but I can see one of the guides there. It's still in place. So everything seems to be okay, so that's good. And like I say, there's no real sludge buildup or anything in here, so that's good. So alright, at least we know where we're at with that now. Alright, so the plugs are in, and next thing we're going to do is we'll separate this manifold so I can start working on the injectors. So there's 2 bolts, one here and one there. So we got to take those off, and that should separate the manifold for me. Alright, so I got it separated now, the injector manifold. So basically, you take the 2 bolts out of the center, and then you have to kind of just pry up easy, and then the injectors, so the manifold goes straight, but the injectors kind of go at an angle. So you pry up on one end and just kind of wiggle it. I sprayed a little WD-40 on there, lube up the seals a little bit. You just kind of wiggle it back and forth and gently just pull it apart. So we get the manifold out now. Here we are. And now we just got to take these injectors out. You got to be very careful with them when you're taking them out, especially if you're reusing them. You can try to tap them out from this side gently. If you try to take them out from this side, don't pry on the connector because you will break it. It's only plastic. So let me get these injectors out, and then we'll see about putting the new ones in. Alright, so now that we have the injectors out, we're going to test them to see if I actually did have a bad injector or not. So the way we're going to do this, get a couple of leads off of a battery, and you're going to touch one to one terminal, one to the other. You should see a little spark and hear a little click. Okay, that one's working. Now this is the one that I think is bad. And it's dead. We're getting nothing off it. So this one's good. And this one, no good. Okay, so that solves that mystery. This is a bad injector. Alright, so we're going to get the new ones. I'm going to clean out all these holes. We'll put a little lube on the seals, put them back in, clean the manifolds off, get the new gaskets, get that bolted back together, and then we'll start on the reassembly. Alright, so we got the new injectors installed in the rail, and I'm just going to go ahead and ping these. Okay, so those are all working, so that's good.
when you put them in, like I say, just put a little grease on the O-rings, and then when you push them in gently until you feel them kind of like pop into place, and then just look to make sure that this seal is kind of level with the end there. If it doesn't look like it's pushed in all the way, then take it out and wiggle it a little bit and squeeze it back in there. All right. Next thing is I'm going to replace the O-ring right there. Let's see, what is that? Okay, I'm just using a little bit of dielectric grease just to lubricate it. Yeah, I'll put this right on here. Okay, that's good. All right, now I got to get the gasket, which is going to be this guy here. All right, and then this is going to go like that. All right, so let's get this sandwiched back on the manifold here. Okay, before you put this back in, you want to look at the manifold and get these old O-rings out from the old injectors. Otherwise, you'll never get the new ones in. If you're saving your old injectors, then you want to put new O-rings in there. Alright, so we get those all out. We'll just wipe those clean and then we'll try to get the manifold set on there. Alright, so that one bolt that was giving me a hard time, it just did not want to come out. So what I did was I hammered it back through and then I cut it with my grinding wheel and then I had to tap it and bang it out. And that thing was in there. There's like a lot of corrosion on the bolt, and that's what was keeping it in there. It would not let it release, and I had to really smack it pretty hard to get it out of there, but it's out now. My wife's getting me a new bolt for it now because I'm not obviously reusing that one. So in the meantime, let me get this back together, and then we'll start a little bit on the reassembly while I'm waiting on her to get me another bolt. All right, so what we're doing now is I have the new gasket. There's a set of dowels here that kind of holds it in place. And then we're going to try and seat these injectors. Now it has to kind of go like down and then that way at the same time. So we'll put just a little bit of lube on these seals to help it slide in a little bit, and then we'll see if we can get that in there. All right, so we're starting to get things reassembled here. When you get the manifold and put it back in, it's kind of a pain. You got to just kind of wrangle it around till you get it lined up. You got to slip the gasket up from behind and make sure it doesn't fall. You got to make sure the holes all line up. So I kind of started on one end, stuck a bolt in just to hold the gasket, and then I try to raise it up on the other end, stick another bolt in, so at least I know it's in place. And then that way you got a couple started on there. And I'm probably going to continue on in the bottom here, getting these things all bolted up, and then I'll work my way to the top. And then we'll get the new wires run on there. The plugs are already in. We'll just get it all reassembled. So let me get some more of this done. All right. Well, I finished putting everything back together. Basically, just the reverse of how I took it apart. And everything seems to be running great now. There's no check engine light. There's no more misfiring from that dead fuel injector. You can see it sounds good, it's running good. And the best part was I didn't scratch up my brand new paint job, so that's good. Alright, so I'm not gonna lie guys, that wasn't a fun job. Volkswagen, they're not very mechanic friendly. Everything was very difficult to get to, and I don't know what the engineers were thinking when they designed things, but definitely not the mechanics in mind. So this was basically an all-day project. I started at about 6 this morning. It's probably maybe 6 already at night, so it's a good 12-hour project. But I got it done. She's running good, and I'm done. So I'm gonna wrap things up, put my tools away. A little bit of a mess going on here. So we'll go ahead and get things cleaned up and maybe take it for a little quick test drive, make sure everything's good, and that'll wrap this one up. Alright, that was a project I wasn't looking forward to, but it's done. I'm glad it's done, and on to other things. Alright guys, if you like the video, give a thumbs up, a like, a share. I hope this helps, gives you a little bit of guidance on what's involved. Alright guys, you have a great day, and I'll catch you on the next one.